Hey everybody, this is Braden Deal, and I wanted to quickly explain the difference between compression and expansion in mixing or music production, as well as the upward versus downward versions of these techniques. The reason I'm making this video is because I was recently trying to get clear on these concepts myself, and I got help from reading articles as well as weather. I can't talk today, as well as a few other videos, which I will link down below in the description. But I thought I would articulate this in my own words here in case this is helpful for anybody else who stumbles upon this. Okay, here we go. So I won't be showcasing any particular examples of how you can use these techniques here. Sorry, maybe in the future. But actually one of the videos in the description will do that pretty well. And if you're looking to get a firm grasp on these conceptually, as far as the individual techniques and how you can use them and in what context, mixing, composing, whatever, hopefully this clears some things up. So I'm going to assume you have a decent understanding of the basics of compression parameters, attack, release, whatever. Look all that up later if you don't. But in a nutshell, compression, what it does is it takes an audio signal and it moves the signal closer to the threshold that you set with the compressor. It moves the signal towards it, closer to it, whatever. That's what compression is. Expansion moves the signal away from the threshold. And with regard to each, whether or not you're using upward or downward compression, that relates to where the signal is going to be moved depending on what side of the threshold the affected signal is on. That's what those things determine. So for compression, for example, like I said, you run an audio signal through a compressor, it's going to move the signal towards the threshold. Now downward compression, which is the most common form of compression, and if you've looked up mixing tutorials, read some stuff online, you're going to hear about downward compression most of the time. And that's the setting that this Pro MB is at right now. It's set to compress, and downward compression is going to take the signal that exceeds the threshold or goes above it and move it down towards the threshold in that direction. It's going to say, get down there, stay in your place, kind of a thing, and control the signal that way. So essentially it's going to make louder parts quieter. You can see, we'll set our threshold here, and then anything that would exceed that, go above that threshold, the compressor will bring it down closer to the threshold. And your range is determining how much you're going to bring it down, and that's what your other parameters control. But that's it in a nutshell. Downward compression takes the signal that exceeds the threshold and moves it down towards the threshold, making louder parts quieter. Upward compression, what that does is takes the signal below the threshold and moves it toward the threshold. So it kind of does the opposite. It makes quieter parts louder. So here with the Pro MB, on the compression setting, were you to take your range and make it positive, now you can determine how much, what exactly the reaction of the compressor will be, how much and to what degree it's going to make quieter parts louder. But that's the compression side of things in a nutshell. Now with expansion, like what I said, it's moving the signal away from the threshold. And similar to compression, downward or upward, that distinction makes the difference as to how downward expansion will take the signal below the threshold and move it even further away from the threshold, even further away than it already is, essentially making quieter parts even more quieter. So the opposite of the compression. And if we moved it to expansion mode here on the Pro MB, that's what we would be doing. And if you're familiar with what a gate is with regards to mixing, audio engineering, that's essentially downward expansion. The gate is often used on drums and percussion and things like that. And basically it's saying, if you're not this tall, you can't ride the ride. If the signal doesn't exceed this particular threshold, you won't be heard at all, or to a certain degree, depending on what your settings are. And if it doesn't exceed the threshold, it gets put so quiet that you can't hear it with regards to a gate. You don't have to use it that way, such that you can't even hear it. Like I'd said, you could just make quieter parts quieter to a certain extent. And then probably, if you're paying attention here, you can guess upward expansion takes the signal above the threshold and move it even farther away from the threshold, making louder parts even louder. So anyway, that's these concepts in a nutshell. Hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully you're clearer on them now than you were 5 minutes ago. And thanks for watching. Have a good one.